Welcome back to Law Call. I'm Morgan Dukes, your host for this evening, and we're talking about COVID in the workplace and the law. You know, all three are happening right now in this day and time that we're living in, but we have from Reynolds Horner Savant, Ms. Kate Kirbo to help us answer some questions tonight, as well as Ms. Brittany Bennett. Both of these wonderful attorneys have some answers, and many of you have submitted your questions. So let's get to it, because somebody wants to know how to handle COVID when it walks in the door. And that's exactly Sherry's question. Sherry sent in an email that says, my son was exposed to COVID at work, and he only found out from the sick boy. Now, his employer never told any of the other workers. Wow. What are the employer's responsibility as far as keeping employees safe from COVID? Brittany, this is such a good question. I mean, help us out here.
It is a great question. It would definitely depend on some of the circumstances and some of the facts. In this particular scenario, the son, was exposed, but at the same time, was the other employee symptomatic, asymptomatic? Was he contagious? Was he not contagious? Did the employer, I guess it kind of raises more questions. Did the employer isolate the other worker so that way, it wouldn't further spread? Was the boy wearing a mask? That kind of stuff. But at the same time, as far as an employer being responsible, as long as the employer is following the CDC guidelines and the proper protocols, there's only so much an employer can do. And they're certainly not an insurer of safety. We all know COVID is out there. It's at playgrounds, it's at libraries, it's at schools. It's at the grocery store. But as far as what your employer is responsible for, they can only do as the best that they can, just like everybody else, so, they're not an insurer of safety. And I think that, this would really be similar to, maybe like a premises liability case. And I think, it's that same level of care, as long as employers are implementing policies where they are protecting their employees to the best of their ability, then that same standard of care applies. And that would be ordinary care to, stop the spread or, help prevent, the further spread to the best of their ability.
Now, Kate, let me ask you this question. Does workers' comp cover COVID in the workplace?
No, not right now. There is no action that can arise from COVID right now. And that, that COVID statute, I think the immunity was expired on July the 15th, but that's a living statute. It's a living disease that's going to change over time. They may put that back into place. And, going back to Brittany's answer, I would think that, there would be some privacy concerns that would come into play as well. Does an employer have a duty to disclose someone's health status? Do they have a duty to inform the entire office, Joe came down with COVID? I don't know. I don't know what the issue would be there. Or I don't know what the answer would be there, but I think that would come into play as well, because you think about, we have a flu season, a bad flu season every year, and there is no duty to inform the entire office if someone comes down with the flu. So I think that we're certainly going to see a lot of litigation stemming from this, and a lot of different areas are going to come into play that you wouldn't necessarily think about.
I totally agree, because I know someone that very same thing just happened. Unfortunately, they died as a result of it. But the person that they came in contact with on the job who had it, who, transmitted it to them, did come forward and let everybody know on the job that this happened. And unfortunately, the person was gone within a week and a half, which was also quite amazing. Now, you mentioned something expired, the date of, was it July 15th? What did you just say? Expired?
Yeah, the immunity that the COVID statute provides expired on July the 15th. And when you're going into just about every public place, they have the COVID statute posted on their door in a certain bold lettering that's required by the statute, stating basically that you're entering at your own risk and that the business can't be held responsible. And it's my understanding, and I don't know for certain, it's my understanding that the immunity for that statute expired on July the 15th. And I would assume that the Georgia legislature is revising it now, and with the Delta variant and the uptick in, COVID infections, that it's going to be put back into place at some point. But that's just what I heard through the grapevine. Brittany, had you heard that?
I haven't heard whether they're going to, revise it or extend it. I think it should be extended. I think that initially when that statute was enacted, the legislature probably thought that, coronavirus would be gone by now. So I think that was probably the reason for the expiration. It just wouldn't be needed at this point. But with the Delta variant, and obviously the pandemic is, ongoing and has continued, I think that it actually, would certainly warrant the extension of the statute and to limit liability for employers. Because like I said earlier, the virus is everywhere, so I think it would be very difficult for a plaintiff to even show that they contracted it from a particular business. And, you might be more familiar with, the burden of proof with something like that, with, that type of liability. But I think it would just be very hard for a plaintiff to even, show that that's where they contracted the virus. I mean, because unless they could somehow show that they have been in their house every minute, and no visitors, or, something like that, a very, isolated situation, it would just be very difficult. And I don't think that employers should bear the burden of, providing some sort of relief when, they're doing the best they can, just like everyone else.